Good morning. Welcome to Family Formation, daily devotions for you and your home during COVID-19. Well, I have finally reached a point in my life that I used to think I would never reach. It comes with parenting, and I'm beginning to believe it comes for all parents this day. It's the day in which I find myself loudly instructing my kids to do what I told them to do simply because I said so. Oh, I remember the days when I used to challenge my mom and dad and say, why do I have to do that? And I remember hearing in response, because I said so. Well, I have found myself lobbying that return back to the boys. And the full circle of things has finally been complete. Well, that's not exactly what we're talking about this morning. But what we are talking about is really circled around this question. Are we willing to be obedient before we understand? That's the question for us. Let me go ahead and read from Luke chapter 5 with Jesus calling his first disciples. It says this: On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. And he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little way from the land, and he sat down and he taught the people from the boat. And when he had finished speaking, Jesus said to Simon, "Put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." And Simon answered, "Master, we toiled all night and took nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets." And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and they filled both the boats so that they began to sink. But when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord." For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish that they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. And Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." And when they had brought their boats to the land, they left everything and followed him. This is, I think, a relevant passage to us. I think this is a relevant lesson to us. And we see that Simon Peter, he does well in response to this. Jesus borrows the boat in order to get some separation between he and the crowd, and he begins to teach. And then Jesus tells Peter to go out a ways and to put down his nets for a catch. But Peter had been toiling all night trying to catch fish. He knows. He's an expert fisherman. He's a lifelong fisherman. He knows where to catch fish and he knows when to catch fish. And he knows when the fish aren't out. And so, on the surface, you would think that Simon Peter would know better than Jesus. But he responds well because he responds in obedience. He goes and he does what Jesus asked him to do. And from it, he ends up drawing out just an insane number of fish. And that's what leads him to drop everything, worship Jesus, and to follow him. Now, I'm not saying that if you do all of the commands in the Bible without question, that you're going to end up pulling in some kind of financial catch. That falls under a health and wealth prosperity gospel that is not biblical. But what I am saying is that when we obey Jesus without question, even when we don't understand, even when we think that we know better, when we follow him anyway, there is blessing. There is joy. We do find him coming through on his promises again and again, which leads us to lay ourselves down and say, "Jesus, we worship you. We are sinful." And then we follow him. And so I don't know quite where this is going to impact you. I don't know quite where you need to be maybe impacted by this text and by this truth. But I'd ask you to search yourself. Is there some area of your life that you have not been willing to be obedient to Jesus? You know that he calls you to do this certain thing, but you're just unwilling to do so because if I give of my finances here, then how am I going to make ends meet? I don't know. And that just, or maybe it just doesn't make sense. And so you hold back and you fail to be obedient to what Jesus is clearly leading you towards because you don't understand. Perhaps it's starting up a conversation with the person that you know is just going to hate it. And you know that it's not going to produce a catch or any reward. But is Jesus calling you to it? Is he leading you to it? Is he calling you to be faithful and obedient? It doesn't mean that everything's going to turn out to be a success, like we said. But it means that there is blessing. There's blessing in obedience to Jesus. And so in what ways can you trust Jesus even when you don't understand what he's trying to do? That's the thought for you today. God bless.